From a young age, I understood my place in the family hierarchy. My name is Stella, but most people call me Stella. I am the younger daughter in a family that, from the outside, might seem like your typical middle-class household. My older sister, Delilah, or Delilah as we call her, was always the shining star. 2 years my senior, she was endowed with golden locks that captured the sunlight perfectly in photographs, which our mother was always eager to share on social media or add to the family album. Although I was not without my charms, sporting dark hair, hazel eyes, and a distinctive look my aunt admired as interesting, in our home, being interesting was insufficient. Delilah was the benchmark of excellence, and I merely existed in her shadow. The favoritism displayed by our parents was unmistakable. Shopping sprees were reserved for Delilah's wardrobe needs, while my necessities were often postponed with a maybe next month, sweetie. Delilah received the larger bedroom for her academic needs and was gifted a car on her 15th birthday. I, on the other hand, received a watch, not even an impressive one. The disparity became painfully clear during our high school graduations. Delilah's graduation was marked by a lavish celebration, and our father announced they would finance her college education as she pursued a career in cake, proudly following in his footsteps. Cheers were raised for her prospective success. 2 years later, when I graduated with superior grades, the scene at our kitchen table was markedly different. As I laid out my college acceptance letters, my parents shared uneasy glances. "Honey," my mother began, avoiding eye contact, "we just can't afford college right now. The market's tough with Delilah's tuition." My father suggested I work to save money for my education. That night, devastated, I cried myself to sleep, vowing it would be the last time their favoritism would affect me so deeply. Determined, I began job hunting the following morning and soon secured a position as a cleaning at the Grand Plaza Hotel, our city's most prestigious hotel. While Delilah returned home after college to save money, I moved into a modest studio apartment across town. Living independently was challenging at first, but the freedom from constant comparison was refreshing. My modest home was truly my own, and each evening, exhausted yet fulfilled, I felt a surge of pride in my self-sufficiency. At work, I embraced every task as a chance to learn everything about the hotel receptionist. My diligence did not go unnoticed. "Stella, you're the only one who consistently gets perfect room inspection scores," Mrs. Natalie, the head house cook, remarked after just 4 months. My approach was simple. Treat every room as if I were the guest. This ethos not only earned me a promotion within 3 months, but also introduced me to intriguing individuals like Angel, a distinguished guest in room 964, who noticed my exceptional service. His acknowledgement was just the beginning of a new chapter, one where my efforts were recognized and valued, irrespective of the shadows cast by familial expectations. One morning, while I was overseeing the 7th floor's cleaning, a guest caught my attention. "Miss, could I have a word?" he called out. What began as a simple query about extra towels evolved into a quarter-hour discussion on hotel operations. Day after day, our paths crossed, until on his 5th day, he casually invited me to dinner. "There's a lovely restaurant downtown," he suggested. Standing firm, I met his gaze and responded, "Mr. Richardson, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not interested in any short-term relationships during your stay." He took my refusal with a chuckle. "Fair enough, but the invitation for dinner still stands. Nothing more." I declined respectfully yet firmly, and throughout his 5-week stay, he remained amiable and respectful. Upon his departure, Mr. Richardson left me his business card, which I stowed away, thinking little of it. However, within weeks, my career began to accelerate unexpectedly. First, I was offered a front desk position, then rapidly ascended to lead the registration team, and soon after, became the assistant manager. Within just 4 months of Mr. Richardson's leave, I found myself managing the entire front office. The swift progression left me bewildered, although I knew my capabilities. Whispers and rumors began to circulate soon after. "She must be involved with Mr. Andrew." One concierge speculated to another, suggesting our hotel's owner was the reason for my rapid promotions. "Did you see how quickly she climbed the ladder?" That doesn't happen without some sort of favor, they insinuated. Despite my efforts to disregard these whispers, they hurt. I had earned every promotion through hard work, dedication, and a thorough understanding of hotel operations, yet rumors painted a different picture, one where my advancement was due to a supposed liaison with Mr. Andrew, whom I had barely met. One Monday, a sudden summons from Mr. Andrew's secretary had me apprehensive about potential bad news. I entered his office at the appointed time, finding him, a tall man in his 30s with discerning eyes, shuffling papers. "You've done exceptional work, Stella," he began, "but there's an issue we need to address about your role as front office manager." My heart sank, anticipating the revelation of my perceived underqualification. "It's time for you to go to college, Stella," he announced unexpectedly. Confused, I blinked. "The hotel will accommodate your schedule, of course. We want you to pursue your degree while maintaining your position here." His words, far from what I had feared, spun my head in a wholly different direction, offering an unexpected but welcome twist to my career path. I was at a loss for words when my boss unexpectedly thanked me. He grinned as he reached into his desk drawer. "I don't usually listen to others when it comes to staffing decisions, but someone convinced me to keep an eye on you," he explained as he handed me a business card. The phone number on it looked familiar. It was the same one Mr. Richardson had given me several months earlier. Later that evening, as I sat in my apartment, I gazed at the card for what seemed like an eternity. With trembling hands, I finally picked up my phone and dialed the number. "I've been expecting your call," a familiar voice greeted me warmly after just 2 rings. "Are you friends with Mr. Andrews?" I inquired, my voice shaky. Angel laughed softly. "We go back 30 years. When I recommend someone, he trusts my judgment. And just so you know, all your promotions were based on your own merit. I merely suggested he recognize your potential." We talked deep into the night. He shared how, during his time observing my work, he had been impressed by my keen eye for detail and innate leadership skills. I reminded him of his younger self, he said, with a similar zeal to overcome any challenge. A couple of days later, we revisited the restaurant where we first met. This time, I enrolled in a college program for hotel and restaurant management, inspired by our conversations. Angel was a pillar of support, offering both emotional and practical help. He shared invaluable business insights that went beyond any textbook. Our relationship evolved effortlessly. There were no grand gestures or pivotal moments. We simply grew closer each day. "Move in with me," he proposed casually one evening as we enjoyed the view from his penthouse balcony. 3 months after that initial phone call, we were married in an intimate, stylish ceremony. I moved from my small studio to his luxurious penthouse. "You've really hit the jackpot," my friend Anna remarked during one of our coffee meetups. "Successful, handsome, and genuinely kind. Men like that are rare." She wasn't wrong. Angel supported my studies, celebrated my professional successes, and always made me feel valued, a stark contrast to my childhood experiences. Our happiness seemed to stir up the dynamics at family gatherings. My sister Delilah, who had always been the center of attention, now seemed to struggle with her personal life despite a thriving career. I often caught her eyeing Angel and me with envy during our family dinners. The same sister who had once ignored me was now unable to hide her jealousy. Despite her constant need for attention, I couldn't help but notice Delilah closely scrutinizing my ring throughout the entire Christmas dinner. Angel later commented on it, saying, "Did you see how intently Delilah was looking at your ring? It was as if she wanted to bore a hole through it with her gaze." It's true, Delilah has always been accustomed to having the finest things, and I sighed, realizing she was struggling with not being the focus of everyone's attention anymore. The tension only escalated when my parents began their mission to find Delilah a husband. At every family gathering, my mother would take me aside and, in her overly sweet voice, hint, "Surely Angel has some nice, single friends. Delilah isn't getting any younger, you know." My father was more straightforward, often saying, "Your sister deserves someone successful, like Angel. You should help her out. That's what families do." The irony of their words was not lost on me, especially considering these were the same parents who had not supported my education financially, but now wanted to leverage my connections for their favorite daughter. During an Easter dinner, Delilah cornered me in the kitchen and bluntly asked, "Why haven't you introduced me to any of Angel's friends?" I took a moment to really look at her. Her appearance was as flawless as ever, but there was a new desperation in her eyes I hadn't seen before. "Maybe because I don't want to manage someone else's romantic life," I responded cautiously. "Besides, relationships aren't just about finding someone wealthy." Delilah snapped back, frustrated. "Easy for you to say. You already landed a rich husband." I walked away from that conversation with a firm resolve to maintain my distance. Delilah's approach to finding a wealthy partner made me uncomfortable. It seemed more like a hunt for a prize rather than a search for genuine affection. I thought I had found my fairy tale ending, but over the next 4 years, subtle changes began to surface. Angel started coming home later, and his business trips became more frequent. Initially, I excused his absences. Busy periods at work were understandable, but his constant delays and excuses began to wear thin. "Sorry, darling, emergency board meeting," he would text, missing another dinner I had prepared. "This trip might extend to 5 weeks, he'd say, barely looking up from his phone. Our penthouse felt increasingly empty, the echo of my heels a stark reminder of my solitude. One night, I decided it was time for a candid conversation. I waited up for him, ready to address our issues. When he arrived home at 10:10 p.m., his expression was distant and cold. "Angel, we need to talk," I said, determined. "Yes, we do," he replied, his tone detached. What followed seemed like a scene from someone else's life, not mine. "I want a divorce," he stated emotionlessly. "I don't love you anymore. In fact, I'm not sure I ever did." His words felt like a physical blow. I stammered, "Angel, if there's a problem, we can fix it. There's always something to work on." "There's nothing to work on, Stella. It's over. My lawyer will contact you," he said, his decision final. Everything moved swiftly after that, and within days, our lives together began to unravel. I received divorce papers unexpectedly, which made me realize that the prenuptial agreement I had signed, thinking it was just a routine document, left me with no rights to any assets, not our shared apartment, not any of his wealth, nor even the furniture we had chosen together. In shock, I quickly packed my belongings into 1 suitcase. With no place else to go, I reluctantly called my parents. "Mom, Dad, I need to stay with you for a bit," I managed to say, trying to hide the tremor in my voice. "Just until I sort things out." The ensuing silence was a clear warning of their reaction. "Oh, honey," my mom responded with insincere sympathy, "we're in the middle of renovations. The guest room is a mess." I suggested sleeping on the sofa, but my dad interjected, "The living room's being painted, and you know our house isn't big." Their endless excuses, each more feeble than the last, stung me deeply, especially their thinly veiled pleasure at my misfortune. Forced to start over, I found a modest apartment across town and threw myself into work, but nothing seemed to go right. My reports were constantly returned for revisions, and my decisions were always second-guessed. Eventually, Mr. Andrew, my former mentor, called me into his office, avoiding eye contact. "Stella," he said, fidgeting with papers, "perhaps it's time you considered other opportunities. We'll gladly give you a reference." The loss of my job compounded the sense of abandonment from my family, plunging me into a deep depression. For weeks, I scarcely left my bed, and the silence from my family was crushing. Not one call or message to see if I was even alive. One morning, my friend Anna burst into my apartment with coffee and bagels, determined to lift my spirits. "This isn't you, Stella," she insisted. As she threw open the curtains, she continued, "The Stella I know is a fighter. The one who rose from a cleaning to management, who worked her way through college while holding a full-time job. That Stella is still here." Her words sparked something in me. Despite the prenuptial agreement, I had wisely saved money, living frugally and always preparing for the unexpected. One restless night, an idea struck me. With my extensive experience in hospitality, from housekeeping to front office management, I knew the industry inside out. "I'm going to open my own hotel," I announced to Anna over breakfast the next day. She was startled by my ambition. "It's a big leap," she said, nearly spitting out her coffee. "I've saved enough for startup costs, and I'll look for investors," I declared, already planning on my phone. I immersed myself in research, developed a comprehensive business plan, and began networking. At a charity event for emerging entrepreneurs, I connected with two investors who were intrigued by my concept for a boutique hotel that would meld luxury with personalized service. The first year was grueling. I manned the reception desk by day, handled paperwork by night, and covered for any staff absence, even spending days doing housekeeping when necessary. But this time, every moment of exhaustion felt worthwhile. My success felt profoundly different. It was truly mine. Over time, I had been gradually building a business that became a triumph of perseverance and dedication. Our hotel became known for its exceptional personal service and meticulous attention to detail. By the third year, we were making a profit, and by the fifth year, I had repaid all my investors, making the hotel entirely my own. During this period of success, my family had distanced themselves, cutting ties so thoroughly that it was as if I had never been part of their lives. There were no more invitations to holiday gatherings or family events. Initially, this rejection was painful, but over time, I came to see their absence as a blessing. It freed me from constant comparisons, subtle criticisms, and the persistent feeling of inadequacy. Occasionally, I would glance at my cousin Delilah's social media updates. Old habits are hard to break. I saw that she had achieved her dream of marrying wealthy and was now flaunting designer clothes for her baby and sharing photos from lavish vacations. As time flew by, our hotel didn't just succeed. It became a sought-after destination in the city for those who valued luxury combined with a personal touch. Travel bloggers often highlighted our distinctive service. Feeling a sense of gratitude and responsibility, I suggested to my management team that we organize something meaningful for the community. This led to the conception of our first charity gala to support educational scholarships for disadvantaged students, a cause close to my heart given my own educational journey. The gala transformed our grand ballroom into a dazzling venue and attracted local celebrities, business leaders, and media coverage. It was a huge success, significantly raising both funds and awareness. Following the gala, I found myself thrust into the public eye. 5 days later, an unexpected call came from the front desk. My parents were there, insisting on seeing me. Composing myself, I approached the lobby. They appeared older and still carried an air of entitlement. My mother attempted a warm greeting, which I cautiously avoided, and asked why they were there. My father, feigning hurt, expressed a desire to reconnect now that I was successful. I couldn't hide my skepticism, recalling their lack of support through my hardest times. The conversation turned when my mother mentioned that Delilah was struggling, her partner had left her, and she was raising her child alone without support. She hinted that I could intervene with the baby's father. I found the request absurd, wondering why he would listen to me. Their visit, it seemed, was not just a bid for reconciliation but also an attempt to seek help for Delilah. The encounter was a stark reminder of the complex dynamics of family relationships, where old patterns can resurface even in new chapters of life. I couldn't comprehend the situation as my mother casually dropped the bombshell about Angel, the man I once called my husband. Suddenly, the room felt like it had stopped spinning as I pieced together the confusing jigsaw of my life. The unexpected richness of my sister's mysterious boyfriend, my parents' unusual aloofness, and the disastrous timing of my career nosedive. Angels? I muttered under my breath, as the reality dawned on me with a clarity that stung sharply. It wasn't planned, my mom retorted defensively, as if the randomness of the situation absolved all betrayal. These things just happen, she added. These things just happen? My voice escalated in disbelief. My husband and my sister? And you chose a side. Delilah and Angel fell in love, my dad explained, as though it justified their actions. We couldn't just pick sides, but their neutrality was a facade. You did take sides. You isolated me. When I needed you most, you turned your backs on me. My voice broke the silence with a raw edge of accusation. "Stop being so dramatic," my mom sighed, dismissing my pain. "In the end, it all worked out. Look at you, owning a hotel." So, Angel did me a favor by having me fired because Delilah felt uncomfortable working with me. I stared at my parents, finally seeing them not as the protectors I thought they were, but as collaborators in the ruin of my life. "Leave," I said quietly. "Stella, don't do this," my mom began. "Leave." My command boomed, and my security personnel appeared instantly. "These people are not welcome here," I instructed them, my voice trembling with anger. "You're being ungrateful," my dad started, but he was cut off as the guards escorted them out. "You'll regret this," my mom yelled back. "Family is all you have." "No," I called out after them. "Family should love and protect you. You're not my family. You just happened to raise me." That was the last interaction I had with my parents. I learned through mutual friends and social media snippets about the subsequent fallout of Delilah and Angel's tumultuous split. She vented about him online, while he threatened legal action. Meanwhile, my parents' fortunes dwindled due to a poor investment, leading them to downsize significantly. In contrast, my life blossomed beautifully. 3 months ago, I met Silas at a conference. He's successful, genuinely loving, and appreciates me for who I am. We're planning to marry next spring. Some nights, I find myself scrolling through Delilah's bitter posts about Angel, chuckling over the ironic justice of their predicament. My sister, once smug with victory, now lamented her single motherhood, while Angel watched his reputation crumble. As for me, the sister they thought they had defeated, I was thriving. My hotel was expanding, and Silas and I were dreaming of our future. The best revenge, I realized, wasn't about getting even. It was about living well and watching karma unfold from afar, preferably with a glass of champagne in hand.
I'm Eliana. My husband Ronald and I both have careers, and we work for well-established companies. However, Ronald earns more than me, so we split the household expenses and utility bills, but he mostly covers the costs of groceries and daily necessities with his income. We both work and have different busy periods. We understand and acknowledge each other's schedules. When one of us is overwhelmed, the other supports and helps out. For example, if I know I'll be late due to overtime, I send him a message in advance, and Ronald takes care of preparing dinner. Conversely, when Ronald is busy, I handle all the household chores. Even now, in the 5th year of marriage, we continue to support and cooperate with each other. There was one day when I ended up working late and hurried back home. "Welcome back, Eliana. Dinner's ready. Would you like to take a bath first?" Ronald always made sure I didn't have any burdens. Even after dinner, when I tried to do the dishes, he would say, "It's fine, you've had a long day at work, Eliana. I'll take care of it. You can just watch TV." He said this while doing the dishes. I loved Ronald for being like that, even though he was tired from our dual-income lifestyle. I was always full of gratitude towards Ronald, and when the roles were reversed, I would do the same for him. In dramas and novels, we often come across the term domineering husband, but it has nothing to do with us. Ronald is kind and helps with the household chores. We will continue to support each other as a married couple and build a happy home together. At least that's what I sincerely believed at that time. Little did I know what would happen next. I hadn't even imagined it yet. One day, something wonderful happened, and I hurried home to be the first to share the news with my husband. "I'm home. Ronald, listen, I have something to tell you," I called out excitedly. "Welcome back, bae. What's the rush? You seem so excited," he greeted me with a smile. I gasped for breath and spoke. "You know what? I got promoted at work." "Huh? A promotion?" he asked, surprised. "Yes. The project I proposed recently went well. We had been discussing the possibility of a promotion for a while, and it's finally confirmed this time," I excitedly explained. Overwhelmed with joy, I hugged Ronald tightly. However, he remained silent. "Ronald?" When I peered into his face, it wasn't the usual expression I saw. "What's wrong?" "I thought this meant I wouldn't burden you anymore. I'll cover the extra expenses we've been sharing, like groceries and daily necessities, I continued, trying to reassure him. I see. Well, that's good for you. I'm going to take a bath, he said, and headed to the bathroom alone. At that moment, I was truly oblivious and didn't realize that my husband's mood had soured. I naively thought he might be tired or something. However, from the day I shared the news of my promotion onwards, Ronald's attitude started to change rapidly. When I finished working overtime and returned home, dinner wasn't prepared. I'm home, Ronald, I called out to Ronald, who was playing with his smartphone in the living room, but he completely ignored me. You didn't make dinner? I mentioned this morning that I would be working late and asked for your help with the household chores, I said, feeling puzzled. Huh? I don't know anything about it. Household chores are a woman's job. Stop relying on men, he replied flatly. It was the first time I had seen such an attitude from my husband, and it left me perplexed. This was the first time he had ever scolded me in such a tone. Wait, what's gotten into you? We used to share the household chores, I reminded him. Stop nagging. Household chores are women's responsibility from the start. Don't get cocky just because you got promoted, he said, kicking the wall forcefully. I was too scared to speak. Until now, we had cooperated and managed the household chores together, which allowed us to balance our work without any issues. But from that day on, my husband started making snide remarks that he had never made before. You are a woman, so focus on the household chores. If you can't handle them properly, quit your job and prioritize your family. He would say such things every day. And to top it off, your company must be a joke if they promote employees like you. Your company's going down, he said, looking down on me. Weekdays became a routine of being subjected to such remarks, and it extended to the weekends. Before, on our days off, we would go out together or meet up with friends. It was our daily routine to enjoy our own individual activities. But since my husband had changed so drastically, every day off, I was confined to doing household chores all day long under his control. Hey, there's still dust there. He pointed to the edge of the window that I had just wiped. Huh? But I just cleaned that? I said, confused. There's still dust right there. Are your eyes full of holes? He shouted angrily. However, no matter how many times I looked, I couldn't see any dust, and I was perplexed. Just do it again quietly, he said, looking down on me from behind. After that, I continued cleaning as he instructed, but my husband never gave his approval. In the end, the day off turned into one where I spent all my time cleaning, just as my husband had asked me to. Such things had become the norm. The same went for cooking. Even before we got married and even after our marriage, until I got promoted, whenever my husband ate the food I cooked, he'd say, Eliana's cooking is the most delicious in the world. I'm such a lucky guy to be able to eat it. He would say that and happily finish every last bite. But now, it's too bland. I can't eat this, he would say, and add a lot of seasoning to the food. How can you serve such garbage-like meals to your husband? He would say, and often take a bite and then throw it away. At that point, even I couldn't stay silent. Hey, why would you do something like that? I got angry and confronted him. It's your fault for cooking such tasteless food. Don't turn it around on me when it's your own fault, he snapped back at me. Every time my husband said such things to me, I felt sad. We used to be so happy every day. But since then, our married life had completely changed. The fight became a constant occurrence. The husband I used to love so much had turned into a completely different person. I had conflicting feelings of not wanting to believe it and needing to accept it. I pleaded multiple times, please, stop talking like that. But my husband's words, actions, and attitude remained unchanged. Not only that, I found out that he had been belittling me and calling me a lousy wife at work. I had a friend who happened to work at the same company as my husband. When I heard about it from my friend, it was truly shocking. I never expected him to badmouth me, even at work. According to my friend, he not only mocked me as a lousy wife, but also said things like, the only reason she got promoted is because she kissed up to her boss, and her promotion has nothing to do with her abilities. I couldn't help but get angry at this. My feelings towards my once-loved husband gradually turned into disgust. Initially, I felt nothing but sadness due to his changing attitude, but after hearing it from my friend, That feeling transformed into anger. However, despite the stress, my work kept me busy as usual. One day, I experienced sudden and intense abdominal pain as soon as I arrived at work and collapsed. When I regained consciousness, I found myself in the hospital. Having been brought there in an ambulance, the attending physician diagnosed me with a stomach ulcer caused by stress. He said I would need to stay in the hospital for a while, so I contacted my husband and asked him to bring the necessary items. Ideally, I wouldn't want to rely on him, but my parents live in a distant rural area, and it felt inconvenient for them to come all the way here just for this. Reluctantly, I called my husband. After several rings, he answered, "What? I'm working overtime here, you know," he said in a long, irritated tone. "I have to stay in the hospital for a while. I need you to bring some things for me," I explained. "Huh, hospital? Are you serious?" he responded without showing any signs of concern, his tone mocking. "The doctor said I need to stay in the hospital for a while. It's a stomach ulcer." "Oh, really? Tough luck. Well, it's your own doing, isn't it?" He laughed dismissively. My own doing, I wondered. Who had the audacity to say that? I had been constantly tormented by my husband's arrogant attitude, day in and day out. In fact, it was because of that very stress that I ended up in this situation. My anger continued to grow. In the evening of the following day, my husband finally showed up at the hospital. Without a single word of concern, his first words were, "What an inconvenience you are." Despite the fact that he had only brought about 40% of the things I had asked for, he had the audacity to say, "Aren't you lucky to have such a kind husband? You should be grateful." I thanked him, saying, "Thank you for taking the time despite being busy." He responded with a smirk. "You know, getting promoted and then collapsing like this might cancel out the promotion altogether, don't you think?" "I already informed the company and explained the situation," I assured him. At that, my husband looked at me and laughed, saying, "If we were to divorce now, you'd be in trouble, wouldn't you?" I asked, "Do you want a divorce?" "Just kidding," he said, laughing dismissively. To make matters worse, he went on to say, "You can't be a good wife unless I properly educate you. If you do something like this again and annoy me, we'll get a divorce. Oh, by the way, you can pay for your own hospital bills. I won't give you a single dollar." With those words, he walked away, wearing a triumphant expression. I replied, "Understood." After my husband left, a few minutes passed, and then I heard a vibrating sound coming from the bed. I lifted the covers and found what seemed to be my husband's smartphone. Could it be that he forgot it? Thinking that, I picked up the phone, recognizing it as my husband's familiar device. Then it started vibrating persistently, notifying incoming messages. Looking at the notification on the screen, there were message alerts. Beside the sender's name, there was a heart symbol, and in an instant, I understood everything. My husband probably thought there was no risk of me checking his phone, so he hadn't put a lock on it. Before my husband returned, I hurriedly opened the phone. As expected, the person who had sent him messages appeared to be his affair partner. "I want to see Ronald today too," the mistress wrote to my husband. "My wife is going to be hospitalized starting today. Will you come to the house?" He answered her. "Really? That's exciting in a way," she continued. "Tonight, I won't let you sleep," Ronald responded. They were engaged in such repulsive exchanges. Judging by the timing, they must have been communicating while he was on his way to the hospital. From that moment, I received consecutive messages. "I want to hear your voice. Is your wife okay? I hope she stays in the hospital for a long time. Let's have lots of love together." All those messages were from her, the woman. What a joke. He had insulted and looked down on me so much, and yet he was having an affair? Unforgivable. I will never forgive it. Everything felt absurd, and I made up my mind to seek revenge on my husband. When I checked the photo folder on his smartphone, I found numerous pictures of him with a woman who appeared to be his affair partner, as well as many questionable photos. Despite feeling nauseous, I quickly sent all those photos to my own phone. The messages exchanged were all captured by my phone's camera. I knew these would become crucial evidence in the future. Driven by that thought, I gathered evidence frankly. Just as I finished, my husband entered the room with an intense expression on his face. I had hidden his phone under the futon in a hurry, so I managed to avoid being caught. "What's wrong?" I calmly asked, pretending nothing had happened. I forgot my phone," he said, clearly flustered. My husband searched for his phone, found it under the futon, and left without saying a word. After a few weeks, I was safely discharged from the hospital. However, there was still much I had to do. Soon after my discharge, I met with a friend who worked at the same company as my infamous husband. She had an acquaintance who was a lawyer, and I wanted her to introduce me to that person when I told her about my husband. "What? That's unbelievable," she exclaimed, getting angry as if it were her own situation. Immediately, she arranged for me to meet her lawyer acquaintance. I explained my situation to him, and he advised me to gather more solid evidence, so I followed his recommendation and purchased a small voice recorder. I decided to keep it in my husband's work bag. It could be remotely switched on and off, and I would turn it on only when he claimed to be working overtime. At first, things didn't go smoothly, and the recordings weren't capturing the audio properly. However, after about 3 months, I finally obtained undeniable evidence of my husband and his affair partner's voices. When I shared this with the lawyer and he listened to it, he said, "With this, we can definitely win." The next day, whenever my husband claimed to be working overtime, I would go to bed early. But on this day, I stayed awake, waiting to talk to him. As the front door clicked open, my husband entered the living room. "Welcome home," I greeted him, and he looked at me with surprise. "What? You're awake?" he asked, his face tense. "I'm tired, so I'll take a bath and go to bed," he added, trying to head towards the bathroom. I stood in front of him and stopped him. "I need to talk to you," I said, holding him back. "What now?" "Can't you see you're being a bother?" he snapped. "I've reached my limit. I want a divorce," I said firmly. "Don't think you can escape from me. You'll live your life as my servant forever," he growled. "I can. I have evidence," I replied firmly. "Evidence?" he asked, confused by my words. In response, I looked into his eyes and spoke clearly. "You are cheating, right?" My words clearly unsettled him. I took the photos, which were part of the evidence of my husband's affair, and scattered them right there. My husband fell to his knees and hurriedly tried to collect them. "Why would you have these?" he asked, panic in his voice. "I borrowed them when you left your phone behind in the hospital room." "Oh, and I've already backed up the data, so it's pointless to delete them," I replied. Suddenly, my husband burst into tears. "Wait, it's not what you think," he stammered, rambling on with meaningless excuses. As he desperately tried to explain, I gathered my belongings and headed towards the front door. Just as I was putting on my shoes, he cried out, "Wait, please don't divorce me. She's just a fling. I truly love you only." He pleaded, shedding tears as he clung to my leg. "Disgusting. Don't ever come near me again," I said coldly, kicking him off and leaving the house, determined never to return. With that thought in mind, I headed to my parents' house. I explained the situation to my company and obtained a week of paid leave. During that time, I searched for and signed a contract for a new apartment. Despite the persistent messages from my husband, I ignored them all. I formally informed my lawyer about leaving the house and entrusted all the divorce matters to him. After divorcing me, my husband became a subject of rumors at his workplace for cheating and being abandoned by his wife. Unable to bear the atmosphere at work, he voluntarily resigned. Now he barely gets by with multiple part-time jobs. He can no longer afford the luxury apartment and now lives in a small one-bedroom place. Renting a new apartment near my workplace has made commuting easier, and I can focus on my work more than ever before. I visit my parents once a month and cherish the time with them. Even now, the irritation towards my ex-husband doesn't completely disappear when I think about it. However, I see it as a positive outcome that I can concentrate on my work and lead a fulfilling life.